You're listening to the Females in Finance Meet the Author Show with host, male ally and author, Tony Steuer. On Meet the Author, Tony will interview diverse authors so you can discover new financial and leadership strategies for women and male allies in the financial services community. This episode is proudly presented by Paperwork. Be prepared for life.
Welcome to the Females in Finance Meet the Author Show, sponsored by Paperwork. I'm your host, Tony Steuer. I'm pleased to be joined today by Joy Loverde. Joy is an author, speaker, media expert responder, long-term care strategist, product spokesperson, and founder of elderindustry.com. With a focus on the mature market population, Joy serves as a marketing and media consultant to senior housing, HR professionals, attorneys, financial planners, clergy, and other members of the fast-growing elder care industry. In this episode, we'll be discussing Joy's book, Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old? Joy, welcome to the Females in Finance Meet the Author Show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Tony.
Joy, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. So, to get started, can you tell us a little bit about what is your origin story? Why are you passionate about elder care?
It began when I was a freshman in high school, when I walked into a nursing home and saw 7 people sitting in the dark on Thanksgiving morning. And I knew right then and there that the problems associated with a successful, longer life had to do with starting planning early. And that's when I wrote my first book, The Complete Elder Care Planner. However, about 10 years ago, people started to come up to me after I would give a keynote or a workshop, and they'd say, I'm doing this for my parents, but who's going to take care of me when I'm old? And bingo, I knew that would be my next book. It's quite simple. When you plan, you have choices. When you don't plan, somebody else may be taking over, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, well, I think that's so important, is to take a little bit of time to plan and think about it. And do you also find that communication is a key for family members to communicate about those plans?
Absolutely. Now, that's easier said than done, right? Because we can't exactly barge into our parents' lives and say, I'm here to save the day. So we have to back up and remember that they're the parent and we're the child forever and ever. So we must tread delicately when we communicate with parents. What I often like to do is talk about going first. This is a little thing that I did with my mom, who was 92 and lived with us and was pretty private about things in her life, and rightfully so. So what I did is I created this list of contacts. It was an emergency contact list. And I said, Mom, just in case something happens to me, I'd like you to have this list so you'll know who to call. Tony, who knows who's going to go first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I did that, I said, do you think you could put together a list for me? And she said, I would love to. And that opened up all kinds of different conversations.
Wow, that is a fantastic tip. I'm actually writing it down because I haven't heard it expressed that way before, because this is a subject I've talked to other people about and I've written about a little bit about myself. And that's a great way to do it, is to take that first step yourself rather than asking your parents to take that first step. So I love that. It's, how did you come up with that? Because, that's actually a groundbreaking way of thinking about it.
I came up with it because it is inevitable that we're going to all have to lean on each other in one way or another, and that putting someone in the hot seat does not necessarily mean that communication will take place. I came up with it because I had far too many family caregivers come up to me and say, what am I doing wrong? My parents won't let me help them. And I would ask them the question, are you telling them what to do? Or are you asking them questions? Are you telling them they need to do something you haven't done for them, or vice versa? It's just about, we have to facilitate each other's success. This isn't a one-way street.
Well, that's wonderful advice. And I think you really hit on there. It's a difference of telling people what to do rather than helping them and asking them how they need help. And I think that's something, we've talked about on this show with other authors is, you know, the question really should be, what does a client want rather than the industry telling them what they need.
Right.
So
Yeah, there's a difference in timing for everyone. So if we're talking about a client who's in a different stage in their life with people around them, then we need to say, where are you in all of this? What are your thoughts? Rather than, hey, these are the 3 top things you need to be thinking about.
yeah, that's wonderful. So in thinking about it, and you've strategized and worked with advisors for years, is how can advisors start to think about changing their mindset to reflect that? What kind of advice do you give advisors?
I talked to them about one question, and Cheryl at Females and Finances is very good at asking this question. It's very simple. What do you want?
I have heard that from Cheryl. Have you also heard her ask about, what's your big
Your,
ask?
your big ask. That's her
Oh,
version. Mine is just ask people what they want and work backward. It's so simple. So I never make assumptions about anyone that I'm speaking with or consulting with because the answers are always different. And by the way, I'm not the expert of their lives, they are.
yeah, that's great perspective. And I think that does get back to, that conversation with your parents is, ask them what they want rather than telling them what they need because nobody wants to be bossed around. And, thinking about that, and thinking about my own parents is I think sometimes, you know, as you get older, you feel like there's somewhat of a loss of control. Do you feel that comes into it as well? Is that people in their
Well,
80s and 90s may feel that way?
sure, but it's really true for all of us. If we put ourselves in their shoes, we say no one knows what's around the corner. And what we're all dealing with is the unknown. So, how do you plan in the midst of the unknown? That's the unsettling of it all, not the fact that we can't plan. We can make plans. We know some basic things. We're going to have to live somewhere, we're going to have to put food in our mouth, and we're going to have to be around people that will help us. Not necessarily, not everybody is social. And once we understand that, we can certainly look around and plan from a big picture point of view, and then not necessarily get into the details until we have to. I pretty much bank on everybody being quite resourceful, especially because we have the internet and we have all of these gizmos and we have all this information at our fingertips. So I say, don't get bogged down in the ditches with all the information. In the planning stage, just continuously look at the big picture and continuously ask yourself, what do I want and what's best for me in this situation? And come from that point of view, especially for solo agers, right? It's
Oh, yeah.
yeah. There's going to be another layer of, who will be around for me, and plan from that perspective. Even if you're currently in a committed relationship now, if you're the last man standing, then you have to still plan from an aging solo point of view.
That's great. And so it makes me think, of course, we're doing a females in finance show, is that, there's more widows than widowers is, why is this even especially more important for women is because they're probably going to be the solo agers.
It's one of the most difficult conversations you can have with a married and a committed woman in a relationship. She finds it very difficult. In fact, study after study has told us that most committed couples do not talk about what happens if one of them dies. Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
I can't understand that. But that shows you how profoundly scary these conversations can be. I think they're scarier if you don't ask the questions.
100%. Yeah, because then, I know in most couples, there's one couple who handles a certain set of tasks, and there's another, the other person handles different tasks. And so, just from that alone is helping your partner be able to live after you pass away, I think is an important gift that you can
Right.
leave them.
Right. There's all kinds of conversations then come up, and then a lot of it about money. If you ask me, that's the number one thing, like long-term care insurance and life insurance and disability insurance, and just taking good care of each other now before you need anything. And there's a good chance that something's going to happen, even if it's for children. And that reminds me, Tony, that I hope if there are grandparents listening to this conversation, one of the things that I do as a grandparent of 10 is I am always looking out for how are they financially set, and can I be of assistance to them, not to give them money, but to think about paying for long-term care insurance if their parents can't afford it.
Yeah, well, I think just that alone, long-term care insurance, we carried, my sister and I had a policy for my mother. She passed away a couple years ago, but we had a long-term care policy for her. That I think that's something children should think about, and planners should think about um, for their clients, is having their clients purchase a long-term care insurance policy for their parents.
One of the things I have found, Tony, is that financial planners may be reluctant to do that because they don't know enough about it. And if I were a financial planner, or if I were giving advice to a financial planner, I would highly suggest that he or she partners up with someone who knows the ins and outs of long-term care insurance, and they act in partnership to assist their clients, rather than say, no, you don't need that, you have enough money in the bank. That's not a good answer. And you never know what is going to happen. What is enough money in the bank?
Yeah, well, and that really is at the core of planning, is covering those what ifs. Life is a series of what ifs, and that's so important, as you point out, is to be prepared for those what ifs, because
Right.
some of them are going to happen.
My husband and I bought long-term care insurance when we were in our 50s. And we used it as a solid financial strategy in case something happened between the years where we certainly couldn't afford long-term care. At some point, our financial advisor may say, okay, now you are really set, because we're both in, I'm 70, he's in his 70s. And so what's going to happen is can we finance 30 more years of whatever? If the answer is yes or no, we don't need it anymore. But we had the peace of mind during those years. So financial stability is so important when planning for the future.
Well, definitely, and I think it's at the core of planning for, what happens when you get old, is that financial decisions you make today are going to impact how you live in the future. And I think, that's one of the things, in your book that you talk about, that I'd like to ask you is, how can you visualize and advocate for your future self?
Oh, I love this question. So I have a concept in my book. It's called time travel. And basically what that is taking a step backward and taking a look around. This concept requires that you pause and you look and you seek out people who are older than you, 20, 30 years older. You don't have to know them, but you could sit in a park and observe. You could be in a grocery store and observe. You could be in a hospital and observe. And you'll begin to see that people age quite differently. And then the question becomes, what is it about some people that allows them to age more successfully than others? And then the time travel means looking far into the future by being observant. And then if you do have people in your life who are 20, 30 years older than you, you could actually begin the process of asking them questions. What would you do if you were me? What did you not do that you wish you had done? So your future self is staring at you right in the rooms, right in front of your face. And these people are our resources to begin the process of getting some real answers. I call them the living answers.
Well, that's great. And I think that gets back to, what you were talking about earlier, is that it's important to plan now so you can connect with that person that you're visualizing in the future. And, it's all about planning, right?
Yeah. Now you'll notice when you do take a step into the time travel concept that everybody ages differently. And even people who have chronic conditions or or not have a very different idea about how to go about living in spite of their aches and pains, or they may be quite healthy. Well, how did they get like that? And what do you do if you're diagnosed with a chronic condition and you still want to remain vital in the world? People have the answers because they're doing it right now. And it's up to us to make time travel a part of your planning. It's a great idea. It's so fun and you learn a lot.
Well, that's great. And that's a different way. I think the word spin is probably not quite appropriate here, but a different way to think about it.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the next question, that I really am super curious about, is because, I'm approaching 60, so I'm starting to really think about this, is why is it important to accept the aging process?
What are our alternatives?
Good point.
And what makes aging so bad? What is it's aging gets a bad rap. It has a bad reputation. The portrayals that we see in media or movies or whatever are really not truly representative of what is possible. So what makes it difficult is not having the whole story. It's our responsibility to understand what aging is like, but we can't know until we begin the process of meeting and befriending people who are older than us, who can show us the way. There is no other way. So this is why I have such a positive attitude about aging, is because of the people I hang out with who are 90 and 100 years old. Not all of them are healthy. Many of them are healthy minded, and not all of them are, many of them have dementia or parts of it. It matters not. I'm constantly being an observer of how they operate in this world. And it's so interesting. But so many of them, I will tell you this, so many of them are happy.
Well, that's great. So it's not something that people should be afraid of then, of aging. It's just
Well,
a different experience.
they're afraid of aging because they don't have it in their lives to observe and to question in a positive way. To be in the presence of many people who have many points of view about aging helps to downplay the fear of getting old.
That's great. So, how do you help advisors to think about that so that they can help their clients with that transition as their clients start to retire? How can they help their clients to think about aging and these issues so that they take a different perspective as they go into their senior years, or
I
if they're even
believe,
called senior years anymore?
oh, heck no. I just call everybody people. But basically, if an advisor wishes to put themselves in the same situation as their clients, they will be better advisors. They have to do the work for themselves first and go through the process of experiencing everything they anticipate their clients may experience in terms of finances or housing or relationships. And so that they come from the perspective of having a greater depth of knowledge of what questions to ask. As far as I'm concerned, the preliminary job of the advisor is to ask the questions nobody wants to ask. And once they begin to feel more comfortable doing that, the outcomes of their meetings with clients will be far greater.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think something in there you said really resonates, especially with this group. with women, female, uh, with women, female, that's the same thing, female financial advisors is that there's really unlimited potential because there's not that many women financial advisors yet. That I think there's so much potential because women can identify with women because it's a similar experience. So, I
Hmm.
mean, would you say that is encouragement for women to recruit more women into the financial services industry?
Oh, I couldn't emphasize that enough. You are so right, Tony. I want to take it a step further. Some of the female financial advisors are also taking it further. They're getting certified in divorce finances, and they're also getting certified in widowhood. I mean, these are niches that they can go into, which is just makes us better as consultants to people. So how many layers can we add on to what we already know to become really, really good at perhaps one or two niches like divorce and like widowhood?
Well, that's great. That's so important. So, one of the things you also talk about is managing the unknowns of aging is, how can we do that? Is that part of the time travel process?
It is, but also we know that there are some givens. We have to live somewhere.
Hmm.
We need to finance our longer lives. So there's money and housing, and then the relationships. And by relationships, I don't just mean people we know. I anticipate that many of us will outlive the people we know today. And we must begin the process of feeling comfortable with walking into a room full of strangers. And I don't mean that literally, but at some point, the relationships become a revolving door. So there are some things that are given. So money, housing, and the revolving door of relationships. Those are those are quite known in the aging process. So if we could stay focused on that, but hands down, money's number one.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, it does all come back to money, financial stress, financial health, all of that plays such
I
an important factor.
Yeah, no, I want to give hope to people who may be listening that don't have a lot of money. So now is the time to do homework on the wonderful programs that are available in cities and towns, the area agencies on aging, to create relationships with your local temple or church, to find out where is the volunteer pool. There's all kinds of things you can do right now if you're aging solo or anticipate aging solo, and you're going to need assistance and relationships in your lives. And these are, I know one woman who started a book club. She started it on my book, Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old, for the purpose of having women around her begin the process of having the mindset that we're going to go through this together, and that we'll stay together for as long as possible. And this has been going on now for several years. She said some of the people in her group have since died, and they have new people coming in. So there are things we can do right now to cultivate trusting long time relationships, but you have to do it now. You can't wait for a crisis.
Definitely. Yeah, you always have to prepare, right? So, I mean, that's actually something I think that, for advisors, and I'd recommend advisors pick up your book, of course, Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old. It's a great book,
Thank
but
you.
that it can be used with your clients to have their own conversations with their own circle um, when they
Mhm.
leave an advisor's office.
Exactly. An advisor who is highly effective with a client, that client will tell all her friends or his friends. And so there are many advantages of going going far beyond just talking about money with your clients, because that's really what is on the client's mind. What is the money for? What is it really for? It's not just for care. There's no guarantee we're going to need care, but we're going to
Mhm.
need money for a quality of life. And a financial planner who is really good will start to talk about the emotions of financing a longer life. And that will bring him or her many more happy clients. You have a happy client, they'll tell all their friends.
100%. Yeah, it's the easiest way to get referrals, is just, solve issues for your clients. But I think you hit on something core that people oftentimes miss about advising is that clients are looking for answers to specific problems. And they're not as interested necessarily in the specifics, but they're interested in, as you mentioned, is like, okay, am I taking care of my future? Rather than, of course, what is the best type of retirement plan is an important part of that conversation. But what they really want to answer is, am I going to have enough money when I retire? Am I going to be able to take care of myself as I age? That's the questions that clients have on their minds. And that's one of the things in interviewing so many female authors who are also female advisors is that's the thing that women get that men often don't get is that's what people are really looking for out of a financial advisory relationship. So I'm so glad you're advocating for that and spreading that message, because I think that will help to change how people view the financial services industry if we're helping people with those issues.
Yes, it's such a human need industry. It's far beyond money.
I love it. Human need industry.
Yes. It's all about quality of life, and it encompasses everything. People, when you had asked me, what's that question that people need to be considering as advisors, and what do I want? If you ask that question, you're going to get as many answers as people you ask. Amazing array of needs that can be addressed from an emotional and financial point of view.
100%. Well, it gets back to that old saying, God gave us one mouth and two ears.
That's right. Yeah.
So anyway, as we start to wrap up, one of the things you talk about in your book quite extensively, and we've talked about on the show, is aging solo. So what is different about aging solo?
The responsibility for all of us to anticipate that we may be aging solo, that's one. And then those who are already aging solo, the responsibility of figuring out the relationships for different purposes. Aging solo will require a lot of professional advice. So that is a key thing. So the lawyers and the financial planners, housing experts, we need to surround ourselves with the professionals who can see in the future for us, could actually talk about it now if we're in our 50s or 60s, far beyond that. So looking for financial and other advisors who can help us see the future. And that is a future alone. And then one other thing is asking our advisors if they have resources that we may not know about. So again, it's the constant researching of filling our plate with resources and relationships. Aging solo is going to require that we do that for the rest of our lives, including our end-of-life plans. So if we're aging solo, we can also make plans for what happens when we're in the dying process, perhaps, or the hospice process, if that need be. Unless you want to die alone, we can make plans to see what are the resources to make sure that I'm surrounded by people who love me, even if they're the wonderful nurses at hospice. I mean, that's okay. That's beautiful anyway.
Well, that's great. And I think the big takeaway is that, this is something that advisors can do for their clients, is they can help them find the resources in their communities and provide that as an extra little add-on service. But as you said, they can even do it from their own self-interest of doing it for themselves and then sharing that with their clients. It's wonderful advice.
Some of the best advisors that I work with have horrendous stories of having gone through things, and that's why they're such good advisors. And they share their stories with me so that I understand that I'm talking to someone who really gets me. So not to
Definitely.
be afraid of saying, hey, this happened to me. I was penniless or whatever. And then you sit there and you say, oh, I really appreciate how vulnerable you have become in front of me so that I can do the same with you. So you can really help me and we can maybe help each other.
Definitely. Well, and I think people tend to connect with people who they feel a personal relationship with, who are warm, and you have to share some of yourself. And as we talked about earlier, and that will help a client to open up. I think even, as you said, is create a contact list for your parents and then ask them to do it for you. Is that essentially, with your clients, you're doing a different type of opening up and is sharing with them, and that will encourage them to share back with you as an advisor. So I think that's wonderful advice. So to wrap up, this is a question I ask everyone: is what is your number one tip for women working in financial services?
I think we already covered it, and that is to become vulnerable and authentic by doing the work themselves. That we look to be in a relationship with people who know and get us. And so to be willing to go through the hard work of making plans and making mistakes and talking about it.
Well, that's fantastic. That's so helpful. So Joy, where can people learn more about you? Where can they get in touch with you? Where can they pick up your books?
Well, the books are sold everywhere. They're published by Random House and DeCapo. So any online and bookstores, and also my website is comprehensive. Tons of information on my website. So my website address is Elder Industry. That's one word, elderindustry.com.
Fantastic. And, in the show notes, we'll be posting the names of Joy's books, her contact information, as well as her website address. I'd encourage people to check it
Yeah.
out. There are some fantastic resources on Joy's website.
Yeah. And you know what, Tony? LinkedIn is another fabulous way to get in touch with me. Just type in my name in the search engine and I'll show up and connect with me, and boom, we're off to the races.
Fantastic. And I'd encourage people who are interested in this area to get in touch with Joy, pick up a copy of her book. And Joy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tony. This has been wonderful.
It was fun. And everyone, thank you as always for tuning in to the Females in Finance Meet the Author show. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. Looking for more information about today's author or interested in joining the Females in Finance networking community? Be sure to subscribe at www.femalesinfinance.com.